There are moments in life when a person's smile hides more than it reveals, when a gentle face carries storms that no one else sees. And for Elian Cruz, known in his small town as the quiet boy with the old soul, this was the truth he lived every day. Elian grew up in a tiny wooden house tucked between coconut trees and worn-out roads.
Please subscribe to our
Inside that
channel.
home, life was simple, but heavy. His mother, Almira, worked long hours cleaning houses, often returning with tired hands and eyes that held both love and exhaustion. His younger sister, Laura, looked up to him with a trust that made him feel both strong and responsible. He had become the quiet pillar of the family, not because he wanted to, but because life had softly pushed him into that role. Every morning, before the sun touched the rooftops, he would sit outside, hearing roosters crow in the distance and the soft hum of tricycles passing by. In those moments, he let himself imagine a life where his voice mattered. A life where the old Elvis songs he practiced secretly at night could lift him beyond the weight of survival. But dreams were expensive. And Elian knew that. He grew up watching his mother struggle to pay rent, watching his sister pretend she wasn't hungry, watching opportunities pass them by like moving shadows. So he learned to keep his dreams quiet, soft enough that they didn't disturb the fragile peace of their home. Still, something inside him refused to fade. Every time he heard music, a small spark rose in him, like a candlelight that stubbornly refused to die out. His voice, deep, warm, golden, was a gift he never talked about. He practiced only when everyone was asleep, singing into a small towel to muffle the sound so neighbors wouldn't hear. No one knew how much heart he poured into those quiet nights. No one knew how his voice carried years of unspoken fears, unexpressed hopes, and memories of a childhood he grew up too fast to enjoy. And yet, in that silence, a question had started to grow in him. A question that haunted him more each day. What if his voice was meant for something bigger? The world had not heard him yet. But soon. It would. Morning arrived quietly, almost gently, as if the world knew Elian needed this day to begin softly. The sky was pale, washed with early light, and a thin breeze moved through the sleepy streets of his small town. Elian stepped outside with a borrowed jacket, the zipper slightly broken, the fabric worn from years of use, yet it felt like armor to him today. His heart was restless. Not loud, but steady, like a drum beating from deep inside his chest. He walked toward the main road where the first buses of the day were starting to appear. The air smelled of damp soil and faraway rain, and each step felt heavier than the last. He carried only a small backpack, but the weight on his shoulders was something bigger, something invisible. This journey wasn't just about reaching a stage. It was about reaching a part of himself he had always been afraid to meet. The bus ride was long and filled with moments of quiet reflection. Through the dusty window, Elian watched towns pass by, fields, small stores, distant mountains, each one a reminder of how far he was from home and how far he hoped to go. As the city skyline grew larger, so did the knot in his stomach. He reached the venue of the auditions, a building so massive it made him feel small instantly. Crowds moved like waves, excited, nervous, hopeful. Everywhere he looked, there were people who seemed more confident, more prepared, more deserving. For a moment, he wondered if he belonged here at all. The entrance was loud with footsteps, laughter, and distant echoes of singers warming up. But inside him, everything was quiet, so quiet that he could hear his own breathing, uneven and hesitant. He checked in at the registration desk, holding the slip of paper with trembling fingers. It didn't feel real. Nothing about this day felt real. Yet, beneath the fear, something steady remained. A small courage he didn't recognize. A quiet voice telling him to take one more step, then one more after that. He walked down the long hallway leading toward the waiting area. The walls were covered with posters of past winners, each smiling confidently. He touched one lightly as he passed, as if asking for strength. This place was intimidating. It was overwhelming. But it was also the one place where he finally had a chance to be seen. And for Elian, that was enough reason to keep walking. Elian sat among dozens of other contestants, each one practicing, adjusting outfits, or whispering to themselves in nervous preparation. The room buzzed with tension, but he felt strangely distant from it, like he was floating somewhere between fear and hope. His number was finally called. He stood slowly, smoothing the wrinkles on his borrowed jacket, and walked toward the stage entrance. The hallway leading there was long and dimly lit, filled with shadows and muffled sounds from the stage. With every step, the air felt tighter, pressing against his chest. As he reached the curtain, a staff member gave him a quick signal to move forward. The lights beyond the curtain were bright, too bright, like stepping into another world. He walked out onto the stage, and for a moment, everything felt unreal. The judges sat before him, illuminated by soft white light. Their expressions were calm, neutral, scanning him with polite curiosity. They didn't know his name. They didn't know his story. To them, he was just another contestant among thousands. The crowd behind the judges was vast, stretching into darkness. People shifted in their seats, whispering, adjusting cameras, barely paying attention. Elian could feel their disinterest like a cold breeze. He stood in the middle of the stage, hands clasped tightly. His breathing was shallow, uneven. The microphone felt heavier than anything he had ever held. A long pause filled the space around him, thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The kind of silence that makes a person question everything inside them. In that stillness, he felt his insecurities rise. He remembered the nights he sang into a towel so no one would hear. He remembered the mornings his mother left before sunrise, exhausted but hopeful. He remembered the dreams he never dared to chase. All those memories gathered around him now, pressing against his heart. But deep inside, beneath all the fear, something stirred. A quiet strength. A small flame refusing to die. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes scanned the room, judges, audience, lights, shadows. For the first time, he wasn't looking at them with fear. He was looking at them with purpose. The world waited. The air trembled with anticipation. And just before he opened his mouth to sing, something shifted. All eyes finally turned to him. The first note left Elian's lips like a soft beam of light breaking through a long-closed window. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forced. It was gentle, warm, yet strong enough to ripple through the massive hall. And instantly, something shifted. The judges, who had been sitting with relaxed, neutral expressions, straightened slightly in their seats. Their eyebrows lifted just a little, as if their minds were trying to catch up with what their ears had just heard. His voice carried a tone that felt familiar yet rare, like the echo of an old record gently revived. It had the richness of a seasoned performer, but also the innocence of someone who had some more to survive than to impress. Every note he released filled the air with a strange magic, like golden threads weaving across the room. They reached the far corners of the hall, touching faces that moments ago had been uninterested. People leaned forward, hearts softening without even realizing it. The room grew still. Completely still. The noise of scattered whispers faded. The restless shifting of seats ceased. Even the backstage crew stopped mid-step, captured by something they didn't expect. As Elian continued, his voice grew stronger, bolder. Not because he forced it, but because it carried years of silent longing. The longing of a boy who had sung only to himself, who had buried his dreams beneath responsibilities, who had prayed for just one moment where he could be seen. And this was that moment. His voice rose into a higher note, trembling beautifully, not with fear, but with emotion. It was the sound of everything he had held inside, every sacrifice, every quiet night, every hidden hope, finally being set free. The judges were frozen. Not by shock, but by something deeper, something emotional. Their faces softened, their eyes widened, their hands slowly lowered to the table as if they didn't want to miss a single vibration of his voice. And then came the final stretch of his performance. A long, breathtaking note that carried a rare kind of purity. The kind that makes a person pause. The kind that makes strangers feel connected. The kind that can only come from someone who has lived through pain and still found a way to shine. When that note finally faded, the silence in the hall was not empty. It was full. Full of awe. Full of emotion. Full of something sacred. Elian had done it. He had let the world hear the voice he had kept hidden for so long. And the world would never be the same again. When the final note drifted into silence, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. For a long, fragile second, nothing moved. Not the judges. Not the audience. Not even Elian himself. It was as if the world had been gently paused by the weight of what they had just heard. Then, slowly, almost like a wave rising from the farthest corner of the room, people began to stand. One row after another. A ripple of awe sweeping across the sea of faces. The judges were the first to rise completely, their expressions softened by something deeper than surprise. They looked at him with a kind of admiration reserved only for those who managed to touch the soul without saying a single word. Elian stood still, unsure of what to do, unsure of how to breathe in a moment so big. His heart thudded loudly in his chest, not from fear this time, but from a dawning realization. That the dream he had buried for years had suddenly been pulled into the light. As the applause grew louder, the lights around him seemed warmer, brighter, almost golden. He could feel the energy from the crowd wrapping around him like a blanket he never knew he needed. It wasn't just applause. It was acceptance. It was recognition. It was love from people who, only minutes ago, didn't know he existed. He thought of his mother, waking up before sunrise, silently carrying the weight of their small world. He thought of his little sister, who believed in him even when he didn't. He thought of the nights he sang quietly into a towel, hoping no one would hear him. And now, thousands had heard him, and thousands wanted more.